New to /x/. Figured you would all appreciate this experience I had as a kid. Be me. Be 3 years old. Family moves to grandparents' house in DFW, Texas because dad lost a job and needs time to get back on feet. Love grandma's house, but haven't ever spent more than about a week or 2 at a time there. Excited because I get to sleep in my own room for the first time. We were dirt poor, since my grandma's house is huge and my infant brother is sick all the time and wakes everyone up at night, and mom feels bad. I get the room above the garage, a cool room. Can see the lizards that live in great numbers on my grandma's porch from that angle. Grandma's house was the only one on the block that had any lizards, let alone hundreds, and we would often find dead frogs in the pool or in the road out front. Look out and see the lizards, and quickly drift off to sleep, knowing that it's going to be a fun time at grandma's. Wake up in the middle of the night because I hear a little pitter-patter sound. Sit up quickly and, noticing the shadows cast on the wall, look towards the night light, one of those ones that projects a cute image of a night sky complete with happy stars and planets. See a teeny, wrinkly purple goblin bastard in nothing but tattered rags with huge yellow-white eyes like light bulbs, dancing around my night light, sort of tap dancing and shimmying his arms. Cool.jpg. Hello there, I say. Bastard stops dancing and slowly turns to look at me. Shiny eyes. Get up to dance with him. No. Stay in bed, he quickly says. His voice is very high-pitched, but assertive. Stay in bed, but still facing him. What is your name? I say to him. Obeskin, pronounced Obeskin. That's just how my 3-year-old self spelled it out. Obeskin, I say back. Yes. What is your name? Anon. I was a dumb kid. He looks and starts clapping and jumping, which would terrify anyone with any real-world experience, but it made me laugh and clap back at him, because I am a kid. He stops clapping and goes quiet and we just look at each other for a bit. I was amused or entranced by the whole thing. I have a question for you, Anon, he said suddenly, breaking the silence. The game is a foot.exe. What question? Where on a camel is its meat? WTF. Confused. Start thinking about camels and what they are and what stands out about them. In the humps. He laughs a little bit at that. No, silly Anon, that would be the water. The meat is in the legs. The big, meaty hind legs that hold the humps up. The bastard laughs like he's the comedian of the century and I join him, because I'm a frigging kid. We stop laughing and he asks, do you know Lindsay? Mom's name, changed for obvious reasons. Yeah, she is my mom. She's asleep. Point in direction of mom's room. I used to watch your mama, he says, with a laugh like a trill at the end. Mom grew up here. All of the sudden, the wind blows the curtains on my window open, which was weird because they A should have already been open, and B, the window itself was closed. Obeskin looks at it and his facial expression changes from giddy/amused to worried/concerned. He starts talking in Dr. Seuss language, that's the best way to describe it, about how he has to leave now and he wishes he could stay and talk about the world, all rhyming and in some meter. Probably can't remember shit because the trance I enter is indescribable as I watch him. He steps backwards up the windowsill. Eye contact remains and he keeps talking. His glowing eyes feel warm and calming. Ever seen two water droplets touch? That's what it looked like when his back foot touched the window, like water joining up with itself. He kept moving backwards, getting fainter in voice and merging more with the window. Soon, only his glowing eyes were left and it was silent, and the wind stopped. I stared into the afterimages of his eyes for only a few seconds as it went from pitch dark night to early morning. In the space of that time, hit by a wave of tired, Mom walks in. Break fast time. MP3. I'm tired, Mom. Tell her about Obeskin, and how he's like my monsters inc monster. I was obsessed with that movie at the time. Leave out the parts about him watching her. I feel like he entrusted me with that info and it would be a breach of trust to disclose it. We write it off as nothing more than a vivid dream for a kid with an overactive imagination, and I go down to eat. Fast forward 8 years. Be me, the oldest of now 5 kids. Visiting Grandma's house for our yearly summer trip. Haven't thought about Obeskin for at least 5 years at this point. Around the table for family breakfast. Something is missing. We all realize that my sister Bailey, 3 years old, is not here, presumably still in bed. Normally, she would wake up with my other sister, 5 years old, who usually shares a room with her, but older sister was having bad nightmares. She slept with my parents that night. Mom goes up to wake Bailey. Comes out of the room, pale as a drywall dust. We all stare in silence. Is Bailey okay? My dad asks. Mom nods. She's fine, but she's too tired to come down because she was up all night playing with the dancing man. As Mom says this, she makes direct eye contact with me from the top of the stairs. Holy shit! I probably go pale, too. It all floods back to me. The rest of the day is very strange and I avoid that bedroom for the rest of the trip. Some details about the story that don't fit as well into narrative form. I found out through asking my grandma that the room in question belonged to my mom's sister, and that my mom and her used to share the room until they started hating each other, as she put it. She and my mom have always had a tenuous relationship, to say the least. Found out in a later and more awkward conversation with my mom that said sister had sexually abused her pretty severely and ongoing, in that room, and that's why they stopped sharing rooms. Obeskin was beginning to seem less benign at this point. Since the events, my grandparents moved away to Utah and for a brief period and due to some interesting happenstance, we came to live with them again. My best friend's mom, who I'll call Shaylee, is kind of a psychic wacko and one time she was over at our house there and she seemed tense talking to my grandparents. When they left the room, she took me aside and told me, "Something is attached to the back of your grandpa's neck. It's eating his energy." When she said this, I shit a brick and told her the whole story. She told me the creature was attached to my grandpa and gave me a piece of smooth wood to burn to exorcise it from him. I never did, Keck. Also, I talked to my sister about her experience and she told me that the wind woke her up in the middle of the night, and she looked over and saw him dancing. She started dancing too, and it was like the little guy couldn't stop as long as she was. He was laughing and dance copying, imitating her moves, but he never spoke to her. Eventually, she got tired and passed out on the floor, where my mom found her. Be me. Living with grandparents, about a year and a half ago. Not too long after the conversation with Shaylee. Watching a TV show with Dad in the basement. Hear banging upstairs. My dad pauses the show. Go check it out, Anon. I walked up the stairs. Could see no lights were on up there. Bang bang. I walk more of the way up until I can see through the banister into the rest of the house. Out of the kitchen comes my grandpa in his pajamas. This grandmother lover is on a razor scooter? He's riding a razor scooter. It's 2 frigging a.m. He sort of tries and fails to do a trick or something, then makes eye contact with me. Freezes. Dismounts. Stares at me for like 10 frames. Throws the scooter down violently. Stomps towards his bedroom. Eye making contact as long as possible. Slams that door shut. End scene. I go downstairs and tell Dad to unpause the show. What was it? Just Grandpa. Hey. Since then, we've moved out of my grandparents' house, but we stayed close because both of them are always incredibly sick with something, and no matter the treatment, it seems like something else always crops up. They feel better with us around for this reason. I know that's sort of what you should expect in your 70s, but another tidbit of info that I gleaned from my mom is that my grandpa used to be a super happy and social person, and he was kind and wonderful to everyone, until he was about 30. He was diagnosed with some disease, and it meant that he couldn't eat a lot of the foods he loved, play any sports, go camping, or really do much of anything that brought him happiness. After that, he was always grumpy and a little scary. Shaylee sometimes asks me about Obeskin, and she tells me that I shouldn't say its name because it gives it power, but some part of me feels safe from him. Can't say the same for my grandpa. I know that the memories from the initial encounters seem very vivid for memories from so young, and that's because they are. They are seared into my mind like a movie I can play anywhere. I will try to answer questions or clarify things tomorrow, but I have to sleep, because it's almost 5 a.m. where I am. I have a similar story. Be me. Probably about 6. Mom makes me go to bed at 9:30. Turn the lights off and lay in my bed. Leave door cracked. A few moments later, the door slightly opened. Look to see what it is. A little blacked out creature about the size of a cat but bipedal is standing there. He touches my foot without saying anything. My whole leg goes numb and starts tingling. It runs out the door and I never saw it again. Pick-related is the closest thing I have ever seen to it. But this entity was completely devoid of color. Have any of you ever met the penis goblin before? I know it seems like a meme, but I had an encounter with him when I was young. Be me. 12 years old. Sleepaway camp in the middle of the woods in California. Camp counselors stress how important it is to stay within the camp. Of course, being dumbasses, we don't listen. Friday the 13th and super frigging foggy. Me and a couple of the older kids decide to sneak out off camp into the woods. We tell spooky stories and shit, but nothing too strange. One of the kids I was with was this edgy kid who seemed really sketchy. He tells this story about how last year he went off into the woods just like we did and saw a terrifying goblin. Oh shit! Silence. A super loud and many shriek is heard in the distance. Nope. Sketchy books it and we quickly follow. He's a little bit ahead but he's stopped for some reason. What? He looked back at me and mouthed out, "Stop." We do. We hear a loud rustling in the bushes. Sketchy kid screams in horror. "Let go of my penis." We all start laughing until the kid next to me does the same thing. Out jumps a 9-foot green goblin man with several arms, similar to the one in the picture. "Give me your penis," he said in his slimy voice. Feel a clawed hand reach up my pants. Run back to camp with the rest of them crying. I didn't sleep for the next few days. Did anyone else have any encounters with the penis goblin? I'm kinda new to this whole thing but this happened to me yesterday, and I still have no clue what it was or anything. Be me. Live in rural England, small village where nothing interesting happens really other than some kid being ran over by his grandparents a few years back. Walking through woods near village with friend. About 7 p.m, sun had begun to set but I still had good visibility. Hear a brief rustling in the trees, sounds of twigs being snapped and leaves being pushed aside. Ignore it and carry on walking. Suddenly this little white bipedal creature darts across a clearing about 10 meters in front of me. Me and friend freeze up with fear completely. It must have run into the long grass. Me and friend turn the complete other way and start running. Hear the frigging thing running behind us. Little footsteps in the mud and twigs snapping under its feet, etc. Run the fastest I ever have, not looking behind me until I'm out. Sat down and tried to process what just happened. Pic is a photo of the woods taken just after leaving. Anyone have any clue what this might have been? Small. White. Bipedal. Fast. Sounds a lot like the typical North American flesh gait. If you hear yourself or your friend again, the same things you said during your walk tonight or the following days, you might be screwed and should keep an eye out. I don't know the taxonomies, so might be the pixies or fairies the other Anons are talking about. There was a screen cap I read once from a few years back how an Anon met a fae of sorts. He was sitting in his ground level room with him mates, I think it was the basement with a window on the ground level, having some drinks and laughs. He then heard someone approaching and shouted, "Piss off!" for shits and giggles. To his horror, a bat-like face as he described it appeared from behind the corner of the window. The creature was short and ugly, and then it said with a grating old woman's voice, something along the lines of, "Now that's not very polite, dear." They took a frigging hike, and when Anon returned to his abode the place was trashed. Despite that, in my opinion you shouldn't have run, you were too and much bigger than it. Should have stayed and kicked the little shit. Don't let fae bastards control your life. Be me, age 17. Home alone with $20. Mom says I can use them for pizza. Hell yeah. JPG. Sitting on couch watching the Clerks animated series. Hear screeching. Think it's the cat next door. Ignore it. See a frigging half crow half human at the corner of my eye. What the hell? GIF. Call my parents. Yeah, we've seen it too, don't worry. What? I have a couple of personal experiences with what I'm assuming is goblins or similar creatures. Have a crawl space under the house I'm living in. Used mostly for storage. Tease my 3-year-old son about there being goblins under the house just to spook him. He's not buying it, lol. I play it up for a while, insisting there is. A few weeks later the crawl space door opens up on its own. I am thoroughly spooked. I go to shut the door and hear numerous snickering voices from inside the crawl space. Nobody else is home with me. The other one is more brief. Working an overnight delivery job, Milkman. Middle of the night. As I'm running back to my truck after delivering to a house, I see a creature underneath the truck. It's got a light metallic blue skin and shining sapphire eyes. It's got big pointy Yoda ears and the eyes are huge. I jump into the truck before it registers in my head that I saw something weird. Get out and look, and it's already gone. Used to dream of horrific dwarf/gnome bastard who would lead me into a nasty shadow world through a fell tree stump. A true schizo friend claims to have seen what he called a brownie in some marshy woodland north of London. At the time he was spending a lot of time in the marshes, and encountered a small brown humanoid dressed in autumn leaves and branches, pouring some bubbling elixir from one vial to another before itself disappearing into a cloud of bubbles. No goblin encounters though, that I know of, sorry. Totally wasted outside a burger joint downtown. Basically micro-sleep with my eyes open while looking down. Almost straight down. Wake up and there's a tiny person in my visual field, somewhere between 2 to 10 inches tall. Normal proportions. Fully clothed with travel gear on. Bastard looks me in the eyes and says "Whoa." I freak out, eyes start lensing trying to process what just happened. By the time I look back the borrower is gone. More likely dreamed than anything, but I can still vividly remember his body relative to the sidewalk slabs. This is a story that happened to my friend. I am in a constant contact with him, so feel free to ask anything. And it follows. Always and to date it's very natural for me to talk about it. Since I can remember, I lived with him, played and told him everything, but we didn't talk with words, but with thoughts. I told this story to my friends in high school that scared and incredulous did not believe me. Until one night I arrived at my house on the street. I saw him standing on the corner of the roof of my house, watching everything and taking care of my arrival. And I managed to take out my cell phone and take a picture, which I shared with my friends, and now you can see. With that I managed to confirm that it was not my imagination to see the little man, because my friends and now you were part of that reality. I edited the photos so easier to see since it was at night time. Hi, I'm OP, sorry for replying late. I'll try to answer your questions, and also I have more information on the subject. Yes, there's a way to get to the roof, and no, people don't put things there often. Birds do often lay there. There's the new information. He did a lot of pranks, like hiding things and money. When someone in my family commented on that, I already knew it was him, and left him candy on the other side of the garden and everything appeared. I mean, one would think that I did it and that would come out of my imagination, but with the photo I confirmed its truthfulness. It also prophesied things and deaths my family that did happen. But in general, he told me that as well as humans, there were many varieties of elves. The greens normies that everyone knows. The good ones. The bad ones, long and skinny arms and legs. And how like us, they made their life and their communes, but they lived in harmony with nature. Where you see many trees with fruits, there are elves. About 2 or 1 year ago he left the house, because he said that difficult times were coming for nature and his society for the same reason, because they rely heavily on nature. Then he went to a larger type of commune to deal with that problem. He said he can't draw for shit, but he could describe it. Long hair, kinda like Keanu Reeves, sometimes he tied it, sometimes not. A little bit muscular, he changed clothes usually like a human. He was orange though, not green. Could it be that his family members or one of them are the ones playing the pranks on your friend? Did he keep on looking to the elf on the roof? What eventually happened to it? Because it looks like a toy a little bit, which someone of his family member could have put there to troll him. Maybe he can confront M with the pick and ask WTF? Also it has the size of a bird, it could be a really useful angle, which he could have created by this mind thing I'm telling you. Ask him if the elf moved, or if it was still, and if it had the shape of an elf always or just in the picture. Also tell him I believe him, and I'm just trying to help this case out of curiosity, and sorry if being rude, not the intention. And sorry about your loss. Also could you ask him things? Like if there is any way to help him with his case, I mean, to help the elf. It could be that their family put the elf figure thing, looks more like a toy soldier, after hearing him talk all these things and seeing the candy, to troll him, and it could also be a bird. Ask him if it moved, and maybe he could ask family directly if anyone put something up there that day and see their reactions. Yes, it could be that the thing in the picture is an elf, but there are also many other factors that your friend has to consider, like a bird, and something up there, like, why did he run out of there when he saw it? What happened to it afterwards? His family seeing his crazy and playing this trick on him, and also that it was a normal object, and in his moment of panic and maybe with this spooked mind, yeah, he aimed this perfect shot. These things happens, we have this messed up thing in our minds that make those things, and shapes in that case are really open to interpretation. So please ask him if any of these are possible. Like, a bird on top of roof plus overactive mind equals this pic, or his family tricking him, for lulz, or anyone putting something in there, or if there's any chance it was an statue or anything. Anyways, in any case I believe that this case apparently seems very real as it gets, but I also warn your friend, OP, with the voices in his head, because that gets dangerous sometimes, elf, or our own minds, they can get very tricky sometimes and we can get in very dark and painful states, so even if he gets a conclusion that it's real, ask him to be super careful, please, and wise and strong. And please ask him to just post more and more info if he can. This is really amusing and epic. Pardon if sliding, there are some pretty active threads ATM, but I was going to post this story a couple days ago. Back in April of 2012, Stanley Park, Westfield, Mass., about 8 of my friends and I were walking around the nature reserve that expands deep into the woods. Admittedly, I was the only one sober, but I was stone cold sober as I was being a trip guide for my friends and still had class later in the day. As per tradition, no cell phones. Also, I hadn't done any psychedelics for months at the time. Anyways, it started to rain and we took a shortcut up a steep hill to get back. This hill is notorious. It has an emergency shelter someone built there, rumors of seeing witchcraft there, and also a documented suicide by a student there. Directly to the left in the pic. We hike up and all my friends are scurrying up this mist-licked path. I stopped for a moment to see if we could cut through the woods. There were about a half dozen, 1-foot-tall huts, made of kindling-sized twigs. It had a pine needle roof, and was held together by gravity. It was the most intricate artwork I've ever seen using nature, and in the middle of the woods during a rainstorm on a path we do take usually twice a week. Inside the huts were these egg-shaped rocks. Perfect, and flat on the bottom as if it was laser cut. I grabbed one and instantly was overwhelmed with fear and dread. I felt that I was literally cursed, or breaking reality when I held it. I safely tucked it back in the hut on top of the hay that was inside. I yell over to my friends, they were cold and tripping, I was sober and confused. 2 of my friends hadn't walked up the hill yet, so I grabbed them and showed them. One only of them was in a coherent mind to care and instantly freaked out and run up the hill. At least I know he saw it too. I guided them back to the warmth of the dorms, grabbed my rain jacket with my friend who saw it too and ran as fast as I could back to the spot. As expected, it was gone. As a child, my aunt and uncle lived in a weird old craftsman box home that had a horror movie basement and attic. They weren't very good with kids. In fact, I don't even remember why the hell I was spending the night there. Anyway, I slept on the couch in their living room, and as I was trying to fall asleep I started to notice the constant ticking of their old Timmy clock. Every hour the clock even rang the hour. So as I notice the clock sound, I also become aware of a set of eyes staring at me. I tried closing my eyes and falling asleep, but I couldn't. I stayed up that night being terrified of that little round face staring at me from across the room. In the morning my uncle claimed that he checked me several times and I was asleep, but all I remember was that face until the sun started to come up. Super creepy house. Y'all, I don't know how to say this, without it sounding fake/gay/stupid, but I think my hometown might be infested with gnomes or like goblins. I'm not sure what they are, but if anyone is interested I have few stories. Some are my own, but I've also been told a few by close friends and local hobos, but they're all fairly similar. I'm not really into all this /x/shit, but I need to talk about it without people in town hearing, cause I don't want everyone to know about the sightings. Y'all, I wish I was joking, but I've seen them twice, once drunk and once sober, and we try to keep the stories secret cause they sound ridiculous. But the first time I heard about it was at a friend's birthday at the local quarry, which is like a kilometer or 2 down the logging roads, just outside of town. Some guy who I barely know went to take a piss in the bushes, but not that long after he left we heard an ear-piercing screech come from where he went, and we saw him come sprinting back, dick still out, and he starts freaking out saying an albino midget came out of the bushes, and giggled at him, then ran off into the forest. He said that he could only see the outline of it and its eyes, that he said glowed red, but from when I saw them I'd say, it's more like when you take a flash photo of someone on a shit camera, and it makes their eyes look all red. My first sighting was on the other side of town at the beach. I was drinking with friends, and like the first sighting I left the main group to piss. When I was pissing I heard a rustling in the bushes, then a shadowy little figure with red eyes pops out of the bushes, and makes a sound that I can only describe as like that noise Skeletor from He-Man makes. It spooked me so bad I fell backwards and pissed all over myself. Then I heard it giggle and scurry away. My second sighting, I was dead sober, but I was about to get high in my backyard, but before I could even get out my lighter, I heard giggling, and I looked up, and on top of my fence was 3 sets of red eyes, and the slight outline of 3 little figures, and they started making the Naya sound again, as I scrambled to get back into my house, cause I don't mess with gnomes. I've been told stories by 5 other people about their sightings, and all of them are fairly similar. It's always someone alone, and 1 to 8 gnomes emerge from the forest or bushes, and they laugh and giggle at you, but they always run off before you can get a good look at them. The story that really freaked me out though was from the homeless guy, who lived in a handmade shack on the beach for a summer, cause no one in town really knew him. We just would sell him weed occasionally. He said that one night he heard stones being thrown at his shack, and when he went outside apparently there were 8 of the little bastards, throwing rocks at his shack. He could barely see them cause Canadian nights are dark as hell, but he said he could see the moonlight reflecting off their red eyes, but this time they didn't run, they just stared at him until we went back inside to get his knife, and when he came out they were gone. The next day he packed his shit up, told us the story when we came to try and sell weed, then he left. All my friends thought he was crazy, but it freaked me the hell out. There is 2 things that make me believe everyone else's stories. 1, almost no one knows about it. The only times I've heard them mentioned besides the stories I told, are always told in such a shameful way, like they're confessing a murder, because who would want to be known as the guy who saw a gnome? 2, we live in the Pacific Northwest. Who the hell would lie about seeing a gnome? If you want to make up a fake monster, it's always about Sasquatch or the Wild Woman. The X is around where my first sighting happened, and the circle is where the beach shack story happened. One night when I was about 7 I was awakened by my grandmother. The power in the house was completely off. We made our way to the kitchen to wait for it to come back on, since her room had the stairs leading to the 2nd floor, which was scary in the dark. Upon reaching the kitchen I see a little figure that looks like the black outline of a little witch jump at us from behind the kitchen table. My grandma swims completely unfazed by this. The creature then jumps, does a front flip and flies right past me. My grandma is looking at me asking why I am acting strange. I don't tell her because she lives on her own and I don't wish to scare her. Any ideas what it could have been? /x/ I come to you in need of help. I live on a small potato farm with my grandmother. I care for her and our ancestral family potato patch. I enjoy taking naps when I am not working or caring for my grandmother, and usually end up staying up late due to my sleep schedule. Recently, I have noticed small, green humanoid creatures digging in our garden at night. They always flee when they notice me, but there's so many of them that by the time I notice them they have already taken a few potatoes. This is damaging our harvest substantially, and my grandmother's health has been failing from stress. I try to tell her about the goblin creatures but she won't believe me, and just believes I'm slacking off on my job. Please, /x/, tell me how to get rid of these goblin creatures. This is kinda short, but it's something I hope. No story worth of green text, more of a little description. This is something my grandpa told me. When he was a kid, he lived with his brothers in a house with an uncovered patch of dirt floor in the living room. He told that sometimes in the middle of night something would appear. He called them goblins, and they would walk around the room, doing nothing, even when there were people in the room with them. He described them like this: the size of a 4 to 5-year-old child, the top of the head was flat, no arms if I remember correctly, no visible eyes, and pitch black. Any ideas of what they were? Have you ever seen one of these things? I worked as a guard in an abandoned dock, and the people there said that the gnomes don't let you sleep at nights. Be me working. 2 weeks later I started. After midnight. Hear scratching on the walls. Go there and see nothing. There is no wind or animals. Same thing the following nights. 1 week later I see a little thing moving behind a tap. It's like a muddy little human, and there are 3 little dogs following it. Looks at me. Nope. I quit and never returned to that place. This was on May of 2017. I can make a draw of that thing if you guys want. I also know an old woman who see that thing on her backyard. Any similar stories?